Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am B-Don, joined as always by the Fantasy Master Lothario himself, the mustachioed mystery man in person, Gray Albright. How you doing, buddy?
Impresario, good, B Don. It's good to. I'm sorry. For people who don't know, I write out a 4-page intro for myself, and then B Don chooses a few
I
words
cut
to
it
say.
down to like two or three, yeah.
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good to talk to you. It's been almost a day.
Yes, after our difficulty with the second base podcast, yeah, we are back. I had about 2 hours, between the second base and shortstop to gather our thoughts. No, it's been a couple days, but yeah, we are here to do what is a solid position finally, Gray. It's not just like we don't really want anybody type of position, so that's going to be awesome. That we actually get to
Yeah.
talk about real stats finally after the first two players.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, this is probably it's pretty self-evident, but the shortstops are a are a good group. It's anyone who follows baseball probably realizes that. But yeah, I would say outfield and then maybe shortstops. But the thing with outfielders obviously is there's a ton more of them, so it's a larger pool. Where shortstops, yeah, there's there's a good chunk of them. There's a
Yeah.
large swath of shortstops that you could draft, and for most people who are in leagues with MIs and utility slots, I would say definitely look at shortstop because the second base. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you listen to the last podcast, the second base pool has questions right out of the gate. The very first player, and then the questions just get worse and worse and worse until we get to Von
Yeah.
Grissom, of course. And then it's just all sunshine and rainbows for one player, and then there's more questions. But yeah, shortstop's a great position. And I noticed this as I was going over, just because it's like the one position where there has been, there's actually stats to look at. Last year's BABIP was 290 Gray across the league. Do you know what was the last year that you have to go back to get a BABIP lower than 290 in the majors?
Wow. 290. Everyone is Miguel Cabrera. I don't know. I would say 1997. I don't know. I'm totally
No,
guessing.
not
No.
bad, not bad.
Yeah.
92 was actually the year that you have to go back to get a BABIP lower than 290 out
Wow.
there. So it has been a while, Gray, since
Wow.
since that we have seen a BABIP. Which, by the way, the averages we're going to get into this as we go, and that's why it came up. Like people's averages just bottomed out at shortstop, even though some of the numbers necessarily didn't. Like averages just fell out because BABIP dropped across the board. Juan Gonzalez was the home run leader that season, in case you were curious about that random fun fact. But it was a bad year for batting average. But let's go ahead and get into shortstops,
Wait, what was
Gray.
that? 97 Juan Gonzalez?
'92.
I don't 92. Oh right, I guess 97. So this welcome to Razzball Baseball Podcast with Mr. Short-Term Memory. Yeah, Juan Gonzalez 92. I'm gonna guess. I don't have it in front of me. I'm gonna guess because he hit a lot of homers a couple years there. I'm gonna guess that
Mm-hmm.
was 52 homers.
It was not. It was 43.
Oh,
He
I
actually
was
hit
way
more the next year, but didn't lead the league, which is, goes to this whole BABIP thing. Um,
52. I was so off.
but he hit 43 homers and hit 260, Gray. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, he was really good for a while there when Jose Canseco met with him in the offseason was like, "Hey man, you
Have
ever
you tried
try
this?
steroids?" Like,
Maybe you should
what?
have noticed something was going wrong when, 36-year-olds were setting home run records. But that's not what we're here to discuss today.
I don't, I feel like there was something with Juan Gonzalez. Rudy would remember. This is the The first mention of Rudy this podcast. There will be many more. This will be the first positive and only positive mention of
Only
Rudy.
positive, yes.
Yeah. Rudy's listening to this podcast for the first time. He's like, wait, what are you talking about, Wait, why is it only positive? No, but Juan Gonzalez had something. Didn't he like do something like he bunted or something? I want to say there was something weird where he bunted, and this is already going to be a 4-hour
Yeah.
podcast. Let's move on.
let's
Okay,
just move on.
All
I
right,
don't
let's
know
move
what
on.
you're talking about. We'll ask Rudy whenever we don't have him on the show ever. So the first tier is all guys we've talked about before: Trey Turner, Bo Bichette, Bobby Witt Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr., and Marcus Semien. I don't even know if they're actually a tier. It probably is a split there somewhere, but we've already talked about them, so we're just moving on. For the first tier that we're going to talk about, number 6 player is Francisco Lindor. Last year, he had 26 home runs, 16 stolen bases, 98, 107, 270, 339, 449. You have him projected for 27 home runs, 17 stolen bases, 101, 104, 261. I mean, it seems like we're kind of in the phase where the 30 home run days, we don't really expect that to come back, and the 20 plus stolen bases are probably gone. But I mean, he's still been very solid. I mean, you pretty much have him across the board the same, average coming down slightly, but everything else kind of in line with what he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at his stats and like I thought from looking at his stats, I thought 2021 was a year to throw out with him because like it was a down year, but sometimes guys have down years. I don't know. Like if you look at his numbers from 2021, they all sort of like they jump off the page as being like an obvious bad year that is not indicative of anything, Like I do worry that like his strikeouts went up a little bit in 2021, but they stayed, where they were in 2021 last year in 2022, and he bounced back pretty good. I mean, it was like, his BABIP was way down in 2021, and that bounced back, and his average bounced back from 230 to 270. Maybe, he's like probably, I want to say his launch angle and fly balls aren't really absurd. Like I see most people like he hits a decent amount of line drives. Like I see a lot of people putting him down for like a much lower average than like you said, I have him down for 261, which I mean he hit 270 last year with a 301 BAB at 261. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off here, but that doesn't seem like that positive, like that optimistic. And then you look at like everyone else's projections for him, and his projections are much lower for everyone else, like, across the board with like the Bat has him for like 248, Steamer has him for 249, Zips has him for 255, so there's a lot of like there's people, everyone else is much lower than I am. So, which I don't really understand, but that's for questions for them, not for me. I think he's a like roughly a 260 hitter, which in his career he's a 277 hitter. 261 feels pretty good. The only reason why I'm even spending so much time on his average is like everything else looks relatively like I don't know. Like you can basically say like 25 homers, tick. I mean, pretty easily. That's a tick in that box pretty easily, I think. And then 10 plus steals. Yeah, again, pretty easy. Runs and RBIs. It's a good lineup. He should be, he doesn't necessarily walk in an insane amount, but he gets on base. He's like a 340, 350 on base percentage guy. So, yeah, I mean, he feels super safe. Like, I don't think there's any real, like, insane, like, the downside feels pretty minimal and the upside feels as minimal. But there's some chance here that he just, like, there's at least a 15, 20% chance Lindor could have an MVP type year. I mean, he could have like a 32 homer, 15 steal, 270, 280 average and just have like a buku runs and RBIs and just be like, mostly on the runs, but last year he had 107 RBIs, so he definitely, sitting in the middle of the lineup isn't bad. It's a good lineup. He could probably have maybe 110 to 115 runs. I'm talking like ceiling and 110 RBIs. Like he could have a really good like top 5 to 10 overall on the player rater type year. And that's really like barely minimal upside from what his like floor is. And I think his floor is really solid. So yeah, I'm in on Lindor again. I'm throwing out 2021 and I'm looking at 2022 as the new norm.
Yeah, I think we're going to disagree right off the bat here. I actually want no part of Lindor at his current cost. So we're going to compare some numbers here. Compared to 2021, which is kind of weird because the dead balls were in 2022. 21 still had the juice balls, but whatever. We're going to move past that. His exit velocity was down last year. His barrel rate was about the same. Hard hit was down, but it was in line with previous years. So you can kind of move that off. But in the last 3 seasons, these are the numbers that like I'm having a hard time moving past on Lindor. His swinging strike rate is up the last 3 seasons. It was his highest CSW rate last year. And in the last 2 seasons, he has a sub 80% contact rate, which he's never done in his career. All those numbers combined to tell me the bat's slowing, which means like if it slows, I'm worried we get something closer to 2021 than we did last year. And his average in those 3 seasons that like we're talking about his swing and strike rate coming down has been completely BABIP driven. Like he had 258 with a 280 BABIP. He hit 230 with a 248 BABIP, and then 270 with 301. So you're just counting on luck to carry him, and he's not hitting the ball with the same authority as he used to. I don't necessarily worry about the speed because he wasn't ever the fastest guy in the league. I think the rules on the check over and everything help him actually maintain the speed. But I'm really worried that the average and the power just aren't going to hang there. I'm probably closer to Rudy's like low 20s rather than mid to high 20s in the home runs.
Well, all right then.
All right. He's also going as the 28th player off the board. That
I guess
hurts.
I have to find a new podcast host, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I'll be taking applications after the show. You know what? I see what you're saying, and I mean it's nothing you said was incorrect. I just look at his O swing is up from 2021. Which isn't really like the best thing you want to see. So, I mean, I guess I could see where all that could lead to a lower average, now that I look at his plate discipline. But on the other hand, just to be devil's advocate, I see like such slight ticks up. Like, it's not like he's like complete, like, it's not like the bottom's falling out on his numbers. He just looks like he just, he was swinging a bit more at more of like a pitcher's pitches. And I mean, he was making contact, just not the best of contact, but not like to the point where he's still only going to be 29 years old. And like, at 31, 32, if those were like his plate discipline numbers, I would be like, yeah, that's not great. The bottom could fall out, but I don't know. I'm not really like really that hugely concerned about it, to be honest. I see what you're saying though, and I guess I could see now when you point those things out, I could see why people's like his projections for average were maybe a little bit lower than mine at 255 versus 261. I mean, we're not talking a huge difference, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he's going to be able to hold his the majority of his stats for another year, but and we'll agree to disagree.
Yeah, we will see. And for what it's worth, I said I didn't want him last year, and he had a great season. So it is what it is. But now I will say the thing I said was, if you drafting Lindor, just wait and draft Dansby Swanson later. And I'll say I was right about that. I'm going to say it again, because if you're drafting Lindor in the top 30 picks, just wait, draft Dansby Swanson in the top 80 picks instead, because I think his numbers are the same, or if not better. But let's go ahead and get into him. He signed with the Cubs. Last year, he had 25 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 99, 96, 277. You have him projected for 27 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 78, 84, 262. So if you have the average coming down and the counting numbers coming down, he moves from Atlanta to Chicago. So you can definitely see why that would happen. I'm all in on Dansby Swanson at his current ADP, though.
Yeah, no, big time. Honestly, I don't understand the Dansby Swanson like fade at all. Like Cool Whip tweeted out the other day something about like how the top he tweeted out, I think it was like the top 20 for the last 3 years on the fantasy baseball player rater, and Swanson, I think, was like, I want to say like 12 or 13 in the top 20. He was somewhere in the top 20. Yeah. So, basically what that's saying is he's just every year he's super valuable. And like, why would you fade that? I don't get it at all. Like like I've said before, like I do my rankings sort of in a bubble, and then I stick my head out of the bubble and I look to see what like ADP and other things are. And Dansby Swanson's ADP makes no sense to me at all. Like I'm so much higher on Dansby Swanson than most people. Like Dansby Swanson for me is easy. Like it's like, well, you didn't like Lindor necessarily, but Lindor and Swanson, like if you just take their names away, 25, 10, 270, they're essentially the same thing. So why would Lindor be going like 50 picks before Swanson? Like it makes no sense. And I think honestly, I think Swanson, because he's like, I think because of the lineup, the Cubs lineup may not be as good as what maybe some people are thinking. Like his runs and RBIs will come down a little bit, but what? I don't like. I feel like people just make up theories in their head. I don't know, man. Like I look at like you try and get a sense for like why people are doing other things, and it's like that's the way to madness. So I don't know why people are doing other things, but you look at Dansby Swanson year over year, he's always like a 25, 10, 260 hitter. Like that's basically what he is. And he's in the prime of his career. Wrigley last year didn't play well for homers, but historically it has played well for homers. So, I don't know, maybe the humidor had something to do with it last year, but I think, Swanson could easily top 30 homers for the first time in his career. He's going to be stealing. Like, why wouldn't they let him run? If he wants to run, bro. There's no one else in the lineup. Run away. And like his average, I don't know. I mean, his Ks have always been around 25%, which, isn't necessarily ideal for a high average, but he's always hit 255, 260. So, like, why can't he do that again? I don't know. Honestly, like, I have no idea why people are fading Dansby Swanson. He's so, like, to me, he's so easily a top, like, 5 or 6 shortstop. And the position is really good. And I still think that, and, by the way, last year, he was 9th overall on the Razzball player rater. So 9th overall last year, and somehow getting faded to the, like, he's easily by far the biggest fade from the top 10 of last year's player rater. Like last year's player rater, every guy in the top 10 is going like in the top 20 overall, except for Dansby Swanson, who's going around 80. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know. Anyway, I'm all in on Swanson.
Yeah, I mean, he might as well just be like the podcast guy. Like he's our guy. Like considering the value, like just associate Dansby Swanson with us because, like, again, even if the average drops and the counting numbers drop, he's going to give you the same like home run, stolen base numbers you're getting from the guys that are sitting in the top 30. It doesn't make any sense to me, Gray. The only thing I can put to it is people keep thinking back to like early Dansby Swanson. So like the way I was saying, Lindor has changed in the last 3 years. Swanson has also changed in the last 4 years, but on the other side, like Swanson keeps getting better. He's hitting the ball with more authority, whereas Lindor is going the opposite way. Like it's baffling to me. Let's move on before I just keep talking. Next tier here, number 8, O'Neill Cruz. Last year he went 17 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 45, 45, or 45, 54, sorry, 233, 294, 450, and 87 games in the majors. In 55 games in the minors, he had 9 home runs, 11 stolen bases, and hit 232. Ray, you have him projected for 30 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 79, 77, and 246. I mean, I love the upside of O'Neill Cruz here. And he did finish well, so that helps at least make me feel better about him moving forward into this year.
Yeah, no, completely. For people who aren't aware, at the end of last year, I think it was like end of August, he went out and he hired his own batting coach because the Pirates suck, and he didn't want to invest, and he didn't want to suck with them. So he went out and hired his own hitting coach, and in the final month, he cut his strikeouts. He hit 288 in September. So I'm even saying 246 or whatever. So I'm even saying he's probably, going to struggle a little bit on batting average. But I even may be underestimating his batting average. Like, I think that's really, like, if you see how loud his skills are, like, if you see him play, the only thing he's missing in his game is potentially batting average. Like that's if for fantasy at least. And he's not missing anything else in real baseball either. if you've seen the arm. So yeah, I mean he's probably pound for pound, I want to say the best bet to go from wherever he is in ADP. I think it's around 70 overall to like the top 5 overall for next year. Like if he puts together his batting average this year, he's going to be a top 5 guy. He may be a top 3 guy. Like I wouldn't be shocked if O'Neill Cruz hits 275 this year, it's going to come with 30 plus homers, 15 plus steals, and he's going to be a top 10 guy on the player rater. He's got that kind of upside easily. I wouldn't be shocked to see him struggle a little bit still on average, and why I'm projecting him for, as low an average as I am. So I wouldn't I'm not banking on him being a top 5 guy, but he's got that sort of upside. I would say, to be realistic, I wouldn't be shocked to see him end up next year ADP around 18 to 22. Like somewhere in that range, and have hit 250 this year with great homers and power, and be sort of like how Bobby Witt is sitting in the in ADP this year. So O'Neill Cruz, I could see him putting together a great year, but still struggling a little bit on average. There's a chance he doesn't struggle at all, but I kind of think he probably is gonna a little bit.
Yeah, I mean the strikeout rate, even after he got his swing fixed and the numbers look better across the board, the strikeout rate was still high. He's just a guy who's aggressive at the plate. He wants to put the ball in play. Like if you're thinking of kind of the mental swing comp, it's like Javier Baez, except that he takes walks. Like he actually he'll watch more pitches go by than Javier Baez ever did. But that's the kind, he wants to hit the ball. He doesn't really want to walk. But to your point about the skills and how fast he can move up, he was 11th in barrels, 12th in sprint speed, 24th in average exit velocity, and 48th in RD rate. And that's despite the fact he did not even play the whole season in the majors. So he didn't even have a half a season of samples that other people had, to put those numbers out.
Right. Exactly. It's like he was. I don't, I've gone back to this example so many times in the past, but if you look at Mike Trout's rookie year, he didn't hit for good average either. It's like people are not giving O'Neill Cruz any benefit of the doubt that he can actually get better with his contact. So, like, I honestly, I mean, I think he's probably, I mean, I'd probably have him roughly at his ADP, maybe a little bit higher. And I want to draft him everywhere. It's going to be, honestly, it's going to be hard for me to be like, I want to draft every shortstop. So I might leave the top 100 with like 4 shortstops and have like one shortstop, one MI, one utility, and one shortstop. Like I might have O'Neill Cruz on my bench because I'm going to have so many shortstops. But yeah, I mean, I'm all in again on O'Neill Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, I again, it's an upside play. You are banking on some growth here, but the tools are so loud. If you've taken a little bit of safety already in your draft, or if you're just the type of drafter like I think myself and Gray are, where we tend to shoot for more upside because what's the point in just banking a boring, terrible stat line like taking, I don't know, George Springer over Dansby Swanson, which is happening, by the way. Like, that's just not us. So, yeah, I love O'Neill Cruz. I love that he's this high, and I think there's some great numbers to come ahead. Moving on to number.
Oh, yeah. The Dansby, George Springer over Dansby. That's just like
George Springer and Alex Bregman are currently going over Dansby Swanson.
Okay, so
is it 2017, Gray?
I know. So Alex Bregman specifically, like I mean, we'll talk about him in the third baseman, but like his ceiling is like, I mean, he did have that MVP insane year.
Great season at one time.
Yeah, but that was like the bouncy ball 2019 insane.
Possibly cheating.
Like Alex Bregman, yeah, possibly cheating. I mean, come on, possibly. I mean, well documented. Yeah, I mean, but Alex Bregman though is like, what's he? 24? No, I don't know. I'll even say 25. 25 homer, 3 steal, 270. Dansby Swanson beats all that, bro. Like, how is Dansby Swanson going after him? Like, it's like, what are people talking about with some of these, like, drafting? I don't know. Anyway,
people are stuck on Dansby Swanson from like 7 years ago. That isn't him now. Moving on, though, let's talk about number 9, Gunnar Henderson, another very fun prospect that we hope is coming up and playing this year. He should be. I don't see why not. By the way, I'm drafting him just in case I don't win, so that I can say in the Mighty Ducks voice, "You lost it for me, Gunnar." And he'll probably be third base only, depending on where you play, but he's going to get shortstop, assuming he makes the lineup. Last year, in 34 games in the majors, he had 4 home runs and a stolen base and hit 259, 47 games at AA. Okay, I don't have those numbers. And 65 games at AAA, he had 11 home runs, 10 stolen bases, and hit 288. Gray, you have projected for 25 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 68, 81, 269. I mean, Gunnar Henderson is another just phenomenal prospect with just loud tools.
Yeah, no, totally. And like I was texting with Jeff, the last podcast host, and actually, if you get fired, you and Jeff could start a podcast. The ex-Rasball podcast host.
We may just start that anyways and just keep the rotation going. There's enough people. I mean, we can always find somebody to jump in.
Anyway, I was talking with Jeff, and I was saying, like, Gunnar and Corbin Carroll, could they be like Bobby Witt and Julio Rodriguez of last year? And he said absolutely. He thought Gunnar, actually, because of his contact, like, he thought Gunnar could be the best of all, definitely better than Bobby Witt, he thought. Julio Rodriguez is on another plane, but better than Bobby Witt was what he was saying. So, I mean, that's the upside, like, look where Bobby Witt's going. Bobby Witt Jr. is going this year. Like, I think he's actually up to like 9 overall, which I think is crazy. But that feels a little bit crazy. But I mean, I have him ranked at like 15, so it's not like it's a big difference. But anyway, Gunnar, Gunnar's tools could be like 25, 15, 280. He could hit for a really good average on top of the 25, 15 numbers. So yeah, I mean, again, another like really exciting prospect, another great exciting shortstop. The one thing I'll say about Gunnar, specifically, like I don't, I mean, here's some Rudy slander. Like the projections hate Gunnar. I don't know for what reason, honestly, I'm not sure, but like Steamer specifically is really down on Gunnar Henderson. It's like Gunnar Henderson base like 17.8 homers. Okay, so say 18 homers. 18 homers and yeah, not great. It's all not good. 249 average. I mean, that's like insane. There's no way if Rudy's going off of his own projections, there's no way he's drafting Gunnar Henderson. I don't see why he would hit like only 18 homers and I mean, yeah, I mean, Baltimore is a terrible stadium, but I don't know. Whatever. It's hard for me to suppose why someone else is projecting a guy for what they are. But yeah, for whatever it's worth, some of the projections hate Gunnar Henderson. So I guess take that with a grain of salt. But I think the tools look right. I mean, they look good. He's only 20. He's 21. He doesn't turn 22 until June. If you saw, like, I think was it his first hit was a home run, or was it his first game? I don't know. I think it was his first game. I remember watching him hit that home run, and like he powered that ball out. Like, and he's also hitting from the left side, which is still an easier side. It's Baltimore doesn't play very. Baltimore isn't as bad for lefties unless they're going the other way, which he does a decent amount, but not to the point where it's going to kill his power. He could pull enough balls out of Camden to be fine. So yeah, I think Gunnar Henderson could be another guy. Like he could be another top 20 guy overall next year. It's very possible.
Yeah, and I think I mean, honestly, I think there's room for growth that's not even being, projected out even by you, and you have, very favorable projections because, I mean, if we're just thinking about like he has, I think personally he has almost the same amount of power as O'Neal Cruz, quite maybe not quite the same exactly, but because he's a little bit more patient about what he swings at. Whereas O'Neal Cruz is just swinging as hard as he can at everything. Gunnar Henderson has a little bit better approach. But if we're just looking at his numbers, now he didn't qualify for like the rates and everything, but if we just stick his numbers into the leaderboard here, he would have been top 5 at average exit velocity. He would have been a top 5 player in hard hit rate. Like he makes solid contact with the ball. So, if everything we put on O'Neal Cruz could be said about Gunnar Henderson, and honestly, he's like you said, he's probably a little bit safer just because the K rate isn't going to be crazy, stupid high like it might be with O'Neal Cruz again.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on to the next tier. This is a guy that I never end up with. At number 10 is Corey Seager. We finally got the power we thought he had. We lost the average in the transition, and I mean, I don't know. It's always like a Rudy guy that he always ends up drafting. But both of you have the average coming back up. Maybe the shift rules help him. He's a lefty. Any lefties probably helped a little bit by the shift rules. I hate his ADP. Everybody's always higher on him than I am. Is there something you can tell me that I'm going to like Corey Seager better?
No, I mean, no,
no,
absolutely not. No, because you know what? Like, I don't necessarily like. I just felt like with Corey Seager, I thought his average could come back up, and if the power was good, He's actually, I will say there's a quick aside. We mentioned this in a previous podcast. I think we mentioned in the second baseman podcast about, the ball in Texas, because they were using a commemorative ball. It was bouncier than other balls. So, and Corey Seager hit a lot of home runs. Like he hit majority of his home runs. He hit 22 homers at home versus 11 on the road. So yeah, that's a little bit of a concern, and then like I said earlier, I don't look at ADP necessarily when I'm doing my rankings. So, I'm saying I feel positive on Corey Seager when I'm doing my rankings. And then you're right, like you look at ADP for him and you're like, well, there's no way I'm drafting him. It's just not possible. Like, honestly, because he's going before O'Neal, Cruz, and Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson, he's going before by a lot. Like, he's going like 25 spots, like almost 2 rounds in front of Dansby Swanson in a 15-team league. Definitely 2 rounds in a 12-team league. So Corey Seager is going so much before Dansby Swanson. That alone tells you there's no way I'm drafting Corey Seager. Like, if, push came to shove and I was drafting a shortstop at that point, even if I like Corey Seager, if Dansby Swanson's on the board, I'm taking Dansby Swanson. So it's like, it doesn't even matter, really. Like, if I like Corey Seager or not, there's just no way I'm drafting him. And, the more I look at him, like, I don't want to, in the past, I think maybe it was 2021. I think like 2 years ago when he had a 16 homers, I think. I don't know. People were drafting him real high one of those years. Maybe it was even earlier. Maybe it was like 2019. There was a year when I wrote a Schmohawk post for Corey Seager saying he was overrated. So I don't really want to go back to that well again because, been there, done that. But I do feel like Corey Seager is overrated. I could probably write the Corey Seager's overrated post every year because he's always overrated.
Yeah, he gets kind of the Correa treatment without like the fact that Correa's now dropped in ADP, but Seager still keeps getting it for some reason. He did have that crazy 2020 season with the shortened season where he hit 15 home runs in 52 games and 307, and like he was one of the best players in fantasy for 52 games.
Yeah, definitely. So was Luke Voigt. So
yeah. So as you mentioned, the ADP just puts him out of a range that either of us are going to draft him. Whether we like, I think he's a solid baseball player in real life. I wouldn't mind having him on the Cubs. I don't want any part of him inside the top 60 draft picks. Like, that's crazy to me in front of the guys he's going in front of. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on, number 11 was Andres Gimenez. We talked about him in the second basement. Number 12 is Willy Adames. Look, it's Corey Seager 50 picks later. Last year, he had 31 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 83, 98, 238. You have him projected for 32 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 79, 90, 242. I mean, I don't mind Willy Adames where he's going. If Corey Seager's going where he's going,
I know, like, it's like if people just, I feel like that game where people like take away a player's name and just leave their stats. Like, if people were to just look at the stats and see Willy Adames going like 60 picks after Corey Seager, they would be like, if you just looked at the numbers, you'd be like, why? Like, because Corey Seager, even saying Corey Seager's upside is 30 homers, which I don't know necessarily if it is or not. But say it's 30 homers, he's like I don't know, four or five steal guy. Like, I mean, it's Corey Seager. I don't know. It's like he's not a big time steal guy. I have him like projected for 2 steals, but say it's 4 steals. So 34, 270. Willie, and that's pushing it on average because he didn't hit that good of an average. That's Corey Seager. Then you say Willy Adames's numbers. You take away Willy Adames's name and you just leave his stats. He's a 30 homer, 8 steal, 250 hitter. So it's like, so the difference between 20 points on average between Seager and Adames, but less steals with Seager and probably less power. And you're saying Seager should go 50 spots ahead in ADP? Like, what? It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Again, I like Willy Adames a lot. I don't know how many shortstops I could potentially draft. So I kind of wish some of these guys would have other eligibility, like, so I could draft them in other spots. But yeah, I mean, I like Willy Adames as well. I think he's, at 27 years old, he's just coming into his prime. He just hit 31 homers. That doesn't really feel like a stretch to say he can hit even for more power. Like he was, he was a guy who, with the Rays specifically, he was another guy who I sort of, I barnacled myself onto the narrative that he was saying he could see the ball much better in road games than when he was playing at the Trop. And the numbers, they bared that out. And he showed that, like, as soon as he left Tampa, everything he's done in Milwaukee has shown that he's probably an easy 30-ish homer guy. Like, he's 30 homer Willy Adames with seven steals at least. And I mean, the average is going to be, it's not going to be like amazing, but he's around a 250 hitter.
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe 5 steals is kind of the at least number. But yeah, I mean, he's going to give you a handful of steals. And I think, like you said, the power is legitimate. And this is another one where I think people are, again, trying to remember, like, the first 2-3 years of Willy Adames, again, with the Rays. Whereas if you go look at the numbers, if you look at everything that's happened in the last 2 seasons, like, he's made significant jumps across the board. Like, barrel rate is up, like, 2 to 3%, which is massive for barrel rate. Hard hit rate is up. I mean, again, it's not even close. Launch angles increased. Exit velocity is up. Like, everything across the board for Willy Adames is on the way up. He's entering his age 27 season. And I think in that part, given what he's shown in his last 2 seasons, there's even more room for growth for his average because he only had a 278 BABIP last year. That goes to that BABIP thing we led off the show with. But, like, he's never had a BABIP lower than 330 before. So if he just hits his normal career BABIP or, in between last year and this year, there's still room for him to go up in BABIP and become a 255, 260 hitter like he's shown before.
Yeah, totally.
All right, so number 13 is Gleyber Torres, and number 14 is Tommy Edman. We already talked about them on the second base, so we're going to move on to the next tier. At number 15 is Tim Anderson. We are getting the name brand retail markup tier. I like the name of it, so that's why you're getting this one. Last year, in 79 games, Tim Anderson had 6 home runs, 13 stolen bases, 50-25, and hit 301. He had 2 IL stints, or I think at least 2, with a groin and a hand. The 3.3 launch angle is not great, but it's kind of was it the injuries? Was it him? Where are you at on Tim Anderson?
Unfortunately, I mean, I like him as a player, but I feel like he's like the second coming of Whit Merrifield. I don't really buy the power. I feel like the BABIP has been really the BABIP's been buoying his average for a long time. At a certain point, I mean, he's 29. He turns 30 in June. I don't know. I mean, it might be too early to say the BABIP is going to plummet, but it was down 30 points last year. If it's down like in the 320 range, he's going to hit 270. I've already said I don't really think the power's real. The speed's never been elite. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I like Tim Anderson a lot as a player, so it's hard for me to be, too crazy negative on him, but I just don't see it. I don't know. I'm not in on Tim Anderson like this year. The injuries have been mounting. He hasn't played in more than 123 games since 2018. Yeah, I'm just not in on Tim Anderson, unfortunately. I just feel like there's a bit of there's a markup just on his name value alone that I just can't get behind.
Yeah, I don't mind Tim Anderson. I think it's one where it depends on his draft cost, because I've seen him go very early in drafts where like people are basically just ignoring last year and drafting him based off of what he'd done previously. And I've seen other drafts where he falls and he just falls and falls and falls, and then he's a great value. So he's a value play for me. It just depends on where he's going. I think the speed's there. I'm not really worried about the speed. The power is a legitimate concern, but I think for me it's more in the launch angle than it is in the actual like hard contact and numbers, because the launch angle keeps decreasing, and it becomes a point where like you can't hit more than 15 home runs if you're going to have a sub 5 launch angle. Like see Christian Yelich, you hit the ball as hard as you want, but if you hit it in the ground, it's not going to go over the fence. So I think the average is fine. I think the stolen bases are fine. I just don't know if the home runs are ever really going to be back to where we thought it would be.
Yep.
Moving on is number 16, Wander Franco, who I think people would kind of put in the same bucket, but I personally think there's still a lot more to come, as he's still only 21. We tend to forget that with Franco because we've been talking about him for what feels like a decade. Last year in 83 games, he hit 6 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 46, 33, 277. You have him projected for 22 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 84, 77, 291. If we want to play the fun prorator game, in April, he had 313, 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases. That was the healthiest he was all season. And then at the end of the season, when he finally came back, he had 322 with a home run, 3 stolen bases.
Yeah, I do think Wander Franco still has like top 20 overall type value. Like I'm still in on Wander. But in the big picture, in the for this year, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna draft him. I don't mind him. Like again, like I like Wander Franco to me feels like he could be Luis Arias, but with actual homers and steals. like I think he could hit 320 and hit, maybe 20 homers and steal 15 bags. Like, like I was taking a beating last year with people saying that I over projected him for steals because I thought he had 15 steal possibility, and he didn't get there last year, but that was more because of the injuries than anything else. Like he stole 8 bags in half a year. I think if he wants, he could steal 15 to 20 bags. I don't know if he's going to want to, but I think if he wants to, he could. And he stole 8 bags last year and he got caught 0 times. So yeah, no, I think and the power, he's definitely a line drive hitter more than a power hitter. Like his fly balls last year is only 31%. His homer per fly ball is only 16.7. I think that's probably a little bit low, but he is mostly a line drive hitter. If he can get to 17 homers, 17 steals, he could hit 315, and that's really valuable. A near 2020 guy hitting 310 or higher is super valuable. So yeah, I mean, I like Wander. It's just a matter of the position being just so stacked. I think there's probably a good chance I take someone like Dansby Swanson, Lindor, or even earlier on, like Trey Turner or Bo Bichette. Like if I have a shortstop already, I mean, I might take a Wander Franco with my MI before I leave the top 100, but there's just so many shortstops. I could see potentially not getting Wander because of that reason, but it's not that I really totally dislike Wander Franco.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think I agree in general. I think when you get to this point, when you're looking at, I don't know, he's going, in the mid 80s. So it kind of depends when you get to this point what you're looking for. Like if you've taken, I don't know, a Bobby Witt, an Adalis Garcia. If you've taken some potential average risk, or you've gone like, I don't, that's where you could go with like a guy Wander, balance out the average, still give you power speed combo, so you're not just like coughing it up and going with somebody that's only average, or like a Brian Reynolds type. Like Wander Franco still has more upside, but he's also gonna potentially buoy your average completely out if you've gone with some more average risky players to this point. So I feel like he's a piece if it's the right time.
Yeah, agreed.
Next up is Xander Bogaerts going to number 7. I love Xander. I've always loved him as a real baseball player. I feel like we're kind of entering Corey Seager territory where his name is just carrying his ADP. He signs his 11-year deal in San Francisco. He'll hit retirement age in San Diego, sorry. So he hit 15 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 84, 73, 307 last year. You have him projected for 17 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 87, 82, 292. I mean, the numbers were down a little bit across the board, the contact numbers, but he had issues like all across the season. Shoulder, back, hammy, thigh. Like he had a bunch of little things kind of nagging him all year. It seems like you're at least kind of back in on him getting some of that power back, and the average staying up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not drafting him though. I am. I'm in on him basically doing what he's been doing more or less. Like not to the point where like, in 2019 when he hit 33 homers, I'm not saying he's getting back there. I mean, I if I'm projecting him for 17 homers, it's still like nowhere near. I mean, it's below most projections. Most projections have him at 19 to 20 homers. But I mean, he's fine. I just think, like you said, I mean, this is really just a name brand sort of tier where you have a bunch of guys who are getting drafted high, and they probably warrant if you were to just look at their stats. And Bogaerts specifically is probably going to be as valuable as his draft pick. Like I don't think he's necessarily going to disappoint, because if he hits 290 in the Padres lineup, he's going to be fine. Like for fantasy value, it may not be the most exciting fantasy value. Like 17 homers isn't really very exciting once the season's going on, and I'm only projecting him for 7 steals. Again, that's not really it's not that exciting. Like it's not a very exciting line, but it's fine for like fantasy value. I'd be shocked, if he gets drafted. His ADP right now is at 87 overall. If he were to get drafted at 87 overall, I'd be shocked if he ends up on the Razzball player rater below 87 overall at the end of the year. Like he is probably going to be worth his draft pick. It's just like, do you want that boring of a draft pick? I don't know.
It is definitely you're getting what you're expecting with Bogaerts. It's not an upside play. It's not a no-nail Cruz. It's not a Gunnar Henderson. Like you're getting average, you're getting runs, RBIs, and a handful of stolen bases. Like that's what you're getting with Xander Bogaerts, and it. Like it just
like here, for instance, he was 68th overall on the player rater last year, so around 70, and he's going at like 86, 87. So yeah, I mean that's what I would expect too. I would expect the same. Like he gets drafted around 80 overall, and he ends up around 70 overall.
Yeah. I will say Rudy's average is down quite a bit, and I wonder if that and I'm guessing it does, has moved from Boston to San Diego. You're losing, those hits against the big monster there. Like that could potentially bring the average down, but I still think he's still going to be good for a plus average here.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're right. I would I'd put money on it that that's the reason why Rudy has his average lower. It's because of the move, like because Fenway is such a high BABIP park that it raises everyone's average a little bit. Last year in Fenway, well, not in Fenway, but on the season he had a 362 BABIP. So that's probably coming down to like 320 to 330 maybe. 315 even. So that's going to hurt his average a little bit. But he hit 307 last year. If you take like you take 10 to 15 points off of there, he's still hitting 290-ish.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Just wanted to point it out since Rudy's numbers do have him down a little bit. So if people are looking at Rudy's rankings, the average is probably what's dragging him down beyond this point. Number 18 is Carlos Correa, maybe the only person in the world with an ankle that's worse than mine.
Wait a minute, you have a bad ankle? What?
Yeah, just you play enough basketball in your youth, and you have terrible ankles. So that's what happened with me. I think it's finally possible. Carlos Correa has crossed the value threshold grade where I might actually draft him this year. Last year, he had 22 home runs, 70, 64, 291. You have him projected for 23 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 83, 71, and a 283 average. Like, Correa might actually be on my team this year for the first time in, I don't know, like 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, no, totally. I could see him. I could after once he signed with the Giants. I mean the Mets. I mean, the Twins. Honestly, I agree. For the first time ever, I could see drafting Carlos Correa just because of the ADP alone. Like, if he's going at like 120. Right now his ADP is 116. If he goes at 120-ish, yeah, I could see drafting him because, like, what are his numbers? Like, just taking him versus Bogaerts, who's going at 87, and Carlos Correa, who's going 30 picks later. So what's really the difference between those two? Like 5 steals? Okay, like fine, but Correa is going to hit for more power. So Correa hits 25 homers, Bogaerts hits 17. Correa hits 280, Bogaerts hits 290. Bogaerts steals, 5 to 7 bags, and Correa steals none. Okay, I mean, those are basically the same. Yeah, I agree. I've never been a Carlos Correa fan for fantasy, but you're right. At this point, I think his ADP has finally reached the point where I could see drafting Carlos Correa. Like, imagine like Carlos Correa as your MI. That sounds really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with that. That's very doable given where he's going. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is the first year we're both actually in on Correa. And it's the first year I've been on him since like 2017 when we thought he was still going to steal bases, and that never really came to for any more fruition. Next up is a new tier. Number 19 is Jeremy Pena. Last year he went 22 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 72, 63, 253. You have him down for 24 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 75, 79, 243. He did lose some batting average in the second half, and I guess the negative is really that there's not a lot of room for him to move up in the lineup, given the Astros lineup is constructed the way it is.
Yeah, too, and Jeremy Pena, unlike a lot of Astro hitters, he's actually one who is he could struggle on average. Like, I wouldn't be shocked to see him like get, like, out of all these guys so far that we've mentioned, I think we're at a point where like I could see him being like a guy who could really tank. I'm not saying he will, but I could see, like, I really like, okay, so backing up. So Jeremy Pena is a guy who I was in big time last year. I really liked Jeremy Pena. I felt like he was a steal going at like 250 to 275 overall last year. Now, I feel like he's probably around what he should be. Like this is his ADP has finally caught up to where his value is. So I don't think he's necessarily like overrated going around like 115 overall, but I do think there's a chance that like Jeremy Pena could potentially disappoint because he has a propensity for like really making some like he doesn't make great contact and he swings a lot. Like his swinging, he had the sixth highest swinging strike rate like for balls outside the zone. So you know, you swing it enough pitches, your average is going to bottom out. Like, you know, I have him projected for like what 243. So I have him at 243. I'm actually on the low side. Most people have him higher than that in their projections. I think I'm still like I mean I think he probably hit 240 plus, but I think there's a real chance he could hit even lower and become like the 9-hole hitter who is really just about the glove. Like he could become a glove first guy. Like he has he has a great glove. So I don't think he's going to get like, you know, demoted to the bench or something. Like I think he's going to stay in the lineup. I think he'll be fine, but I do worry that, you know, last year we saw potentially the best like pitchers could work him over if they have a better game plan. That's my real concern with him.
Yeah, and I know the thing that I think is, and I know you said you think his draft value is about right, and maybe it is. You know, he's a potential 2010 guy with a decent with an average that's not going to bury you. But I will say, like, I think the postseason numbers are potentially buoying his draft stock a little bit. Everybody remembers he was great in the playoffs. He hit 345s. He had 4 home runs. I mean, he was amazing in the playoffs. But like for the most part, his season kind of declined as the season went on until the postseason. So I'm with you that I'm worried that there is a little bit of a bottoming out factor here.
And again, also, if you think about what I said, like his sixth highest on balls outside the zone, swinging rate of balls outside the zone. If you think about like the narrative there, like if you're in the postseason, you're facing pitchers only 1 or 2 times. Guys are not getting a chance to really like, you know, establish like how to a game plan to go against you. But when you get into the long season, you get into the regular season, 162 games, guys formulate a plan real quick. And it's like, oh, we don't have to throw this guy strikes. You know, that may play in the postseason because people don't realize they can avoid throwing you strikes. But in the postseason, in the regular season, when they see like you have an under 4% walk rate and you swing at a lot of balls, it's not a great recipe for success.
No, it's not. And the power is not really that loud. I think 22 is. I know he's only 24, but 22 feels like the most that he's going to put up, and that's really thankful to the Crawford boxes there. Just looking at his scatter chart, I mean, it looks like he wouldn't have maybe even half of those in other parks. But I do think the speed is something where if they just let him run, like if they're like, whatever, you're going to hit 7, 8, 9, you get on base, you run. I think that could be where his value comes from because he has top level speed. I mean, he could steal 25, 30 bases if they let him. I just don't know. That's really not how the Astros have really played, in recent times outside of, the random pop-up seasons with a few stolen base guys. But, like, I just don't know if I see that.
Yeah, agreed.
Moving on to number 20 is Amed Rosario. Last year, he had 11 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 86, 71, and 283. You have him projected for 12 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 81, 68, and 281. So pretty much exactly what he did last year. It's a guy that the shift rules, I think, could potentially help out just because he hits a ton of ground balls, 4th most among qualified hitters. But where are you at on Amed Rosario?
Yeah, I mean he sort of feels not too dissimilar from like an Andres Jimenez, who we mentioned in the second base podcast, where like he feels kind of like floor-ish. Like, it's not. I don't know if there's going to be huge upside with the power specifically. Like he hit 11 homers the last 2 years, and I don't know. I mean, maybe 15 homers could be a high potentially. I don't think he's really going above that though. And steals, yeah, I mean he's got some speed. He's fast enough to steal. I don't know if he's going to really get to like 30 steals. Like that feels high. He does have great contact, good plate discipline. Uh, he swings a lot. He doesn't walk a ton, but he does make contact, and good contact with speed. That's a recipe for like a 270 plus average. So, yeah, I mean, like say 12 homers, 20 steals, 270. There's worse things you could put at your MI slot. I don't think there's really any huge upside though.
Yeah, I think you're chasing the stolen bases, at the point you're taking Amed Rosario, and it's coming with, solid line across the board. So you're not losing out on average. He's not a zero in the home run, so you're not getting a Arias type here. I do think there is upside on stolen base. I mean, he is fast. He is one of the fastest players on the field at any given time. So I do think that there's potential for more stolen bases. I mean, I think he could be a 25-30 guy if they let him run. I don't know if Cleveland's going to let him run. And it seems like Stephen Kwan probably gets a majority of the time at leadoff spot. Maybe that depends on whether they're going righty or lefty. But I do think the speed is potentially there to make him that be the area that he's kind of a top-notch player for you and maybe move up his stock a little bit.
Yep.
All right, 21 is Tyro Estrada. We already talked about him in the second baseman. So we're moving on to number 22, which is Nico Hoerner. Last season, he had 10 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 60, 55, and 281. Yeah, I'm projected for 13 home runs, 24 stolen bases, 81, 62, 284. So a slight bump on the power and speed. He did miss a little bit of time dealing with an arm issue towards the end of the season. So that's kind of where I think the extra comes from. But Nico Hoerner seems like kind of what we just talked about with Amed Rosario a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think actually Nico Hoerner, like every year I write a bunch of sleeper posts in like October, November, and then I dole them out over the course of like November, December, January, right before the rankings drop. Like sometimes I try and time them out, but there's like occasions where like news will drop and like, Carlos Correa signing with every team in the major leagues sort of messed me up a little bit because I had to stop my sleepers to talk about Carlos Correa on two different teams before he finally signed with us third. So I didn't get to my long story short, I didn't get to my Nico Hoerner sleeper post. I didn't get to post it. I had it written, but I just never got to it because it just got bumped. And I mean, he's kind of like surprisingly, I think like I looked at his numbers and I was like shocked at how good he did last year. I don't think I realized like that he hit 10 homers and stole 20 bags and hit 281 in the major leagues and only 517 plate appearances / 481 at bats. I was shocked at how well he did. Like if he's hitting 10 plus homers again and stealing 20 plus bags and really good, like only 11% strikeout rate last year. Like if he's hitting 280, I don't know, that's really good. I was surprised at how good Nico Hoerner was. I guess I might have been the only one though, because like I look at his ADP and his ADP is actually pretty much in line with where it should be. So I'm sort of glad at the end of the day. I'm kind of glad I didn't drop the sleeper post because he's not really a sleeper. He's going where he should be going. Like he does look like Amed Rosario, essentially just on a different team. Like he is like, 12, 11, 10 to 12 homers, 20-ish steals, and 270 plus 275 plus average.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it just kind of went unnoticed. And honestly, as a Cubs fan, if anything on the north side of Chicago went unnoticed last year, nobody can blame you because there was not a lot to be noticed. But yeah, like he's perfectly fine, especially like as you get into deeper leagues. Like if he's your MI, or I mean, he could even be a backup at this point for you. Like that's a solid pick where he's going. And even if he's your starting shortstop and you've kind of loaded up elsewhere, you could do a lot worse than 10, 20, and 280 average sitting at the top of a lineup, even if it is the Cubs lineup. Number 23 is C.J. Abrams. We talked about him in second base. 24 is Jorge Polanco. This starts a new tier, by the way. 24 is Jorge Polanco. We talked about him in second base as well. So number 25 is Javier Baez. Last year, he had 17 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 64, 67, 238. I thought at least the power speed would hang on. Nothing really hang on last year. But for what it's worth, the second half was a little bit better. He had 268, 8 home runs, and 6 stolen bases. And Comerica is moving in the fences and dropping the fences a little bit. So hopefully all of that combines to help a little bit. It does seem like you're giving him a little bit of a jump back, but not much. 19 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 70, 68, and 234. Rudy seems much more on board with the bounce back than you are.
Yeah, I mean, his batting average versus sliders is just so hilariously awful. I mean, he hit 196 last year versus sliders. Bro, take him to like White Castle and see if he can get a slider in his mouth. I'm just like looking at his numbers, and you're like, I don't know, man. I mean, there's such an obvious path for pitchers to attack him that I just worry that it's not going to get better if he can't figure out how to hit a slider. I mean, why would you throw him anything else? Like, it's just so funny too that like he walked a decent, like he ended up striking out a ton less. Like last year, his strikeouts from year over year went from 33.6% to 24.9%. And it's so like, but it's honestly, that's kind of hilarious that his strikeouts got cut so dramatically in a year when he struggled so much. But it's really obvious, like if you look at his numbers, why his strikeouts went down, because at a certain point last year, he just stopped swinging because he realized he couldn't hit anything. Like he was hitting so poorly against sliders specifically. Like he just stopped swinging at everything. Like if you threw him, like he just like his strikes, like his strikeouts just went down because he just stopped swinging, and pitchers were throwing so many balls in the dirt that a few of them ended up being balls. So it was like, oh wow, look at this. Javi Baez is getting better plate discipline. It's like, not really. He's not really. His plate discipline is still a mess. It just like it was a matter of him just not swinging at sliders because he couldn't hit them. It's odd too. Like maybe there's a chance all like last year could have been a fluke. Like that's possible because like he's at an age where I wouldn't bet on it being a fluke because like, he's not exactly young anymore. He's just turned 30. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a fluke. But the thing with the sliders, like the year before he hit 297 versus sliders. So it could have been fluky, but I don't know. Like I'm not willing to say 100% it was a fluke, but there is a chance that maybe he figured something out, and maybe it was like a hitter's type yips for him, where he just was so in a funk that it just like it became a self-fulfilling prophecy type thing, where like he thought in his head he couldn't hit sliders, so he couldn't hit them. So it became just like it maybe he can come out of it. I don't know, but I'm probably not drafting him to find out. If we're being honest, I'm just like shortstop is just such a stacked position that there's just no reason for me to draft Javi Baez.
Yeah, and I mean, and the thing is, like, his whiff rate, if we just compare 2021 and 2022, his whiff rate against the slider is exactly the same, Gray. His K rate against the slider in 21 was actually worse. Like, he struck out more against the slider in 2021 than he did in 2022, or than he did in 2022. But, like, he just hit 196 rather than 276. His slug was 333 rather than 494. So, like, it could have been a mental thing. It could have just been, like, his eyes that just didn't line up at Comerica. Like, that could be a thing. But like I said, the second half was slightly better. So I think there's some room for him to bounce back. I don't necessarily think we're getting, like, prime Javi Baez back at any point. But I think he could be, more than a 230, 18 home run guy. I think he'd be like a 25 home run, 10 steal, 250 guy. Like, I think that's well within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, completely.
All right, moving on. And I mean, I don't know that we have to talk about him, but we're going to talk about him because he's our favorite player, and we're going to draft him regardless of the year. Alberto Mondesi comes in at 26. He's traded to Boston, or traded for by Boston. Last year, he only played 15 games. He was terrible in those 15 games. He had 140. You have him projected for 7 home runs, 27 stolen bases, 49, 44, 253, and that's in 352 at-bats. Is there anything that we have to say about Alberto Mondesi, or can we just go ahead and move on because everybody knows what we have to say about him?
I love him. I love Alberto Mondesi. I think... I mean, I don't think there's any chance that I drafted him or I draft him this year. I think, like, he's probably way off the board for me. I mean, it's kind of silly to draft him. I don't see how you could get to the point where like, he's going in drafts and being like, you know what? That's what I want. I want that. I don't know. It's just like, unless you're really desperate for steals, I guess you take a flyer. Like, he's a very specific player at this point. Like, you're basically expecting nothing, and you're hoping for a random 35 steals. I think, like, that's kind of, I guess, what the gamble is with Mondesi. I won't be drafting him, but God bless if you are. I mean, good for you. Good for you that you're able to stay optimistic after all these years.
Thanks, Gray. I really appreciate that because he'll be on my teams. That will happen. It will still happen because if he just, he can win. He can win you a league. And so I'm going to always fall into that trap. It's just who I am, Gray. At least it's coming at a much, much less expensive draft cost finally. So I don't have to pay up for it, at least.
Yeah, that's fair.
Moving on, number 27. 27 through 30 we've talked about. That is Jake Cronenworth, Brendan Donovan, Bryson Stott, and Chris Morrell. We talked about them all on the first or second baseman podcast. So number 31 is Ezequiel Tovar. I'm a little shocked that the Rockies didn't swoop in and give Correa 15 years after all the deals got canceled on him, but here we are. Tovar had 9 games up in the majors. He had 1 home run, hit 212. That's not really important. And 66 games at Double-A. He had 13 home runs, 17 stolen bases, and hit 318. And he had 5 games at Triple-A. Again, not really all that important. You have him projected for 11 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 51, 41, 264, and 402 at-bats. So not a full season here for Tovar, because why would the Rockies ever do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, kind of like Mondesi. I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 450 times, shame on Bud Black. I mean, like, how many times do I have to go to the Bud Black well and be like, hey, man, what do you think of Garrett Hampson, huh? Hey, what's up, Sam Hilliard? Whoa, Rami Altabia, don't mind if I do. Like, I don't know. It's like there's no way Bud Black's playing Tovar for, like, I have him down for 402 at bats, and that's me giving him the benefit of the doubt that he's actually going to be an everyday starter. Like he's still going to miss. I'm still guessing he's going to miss 100 at bats because Bud Black is just going to bench him for no reason. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And honestly, like if he had like 60 grade speed and like, to go with like a spot in the everyday order for the Rockies, I might be more generous with his ranking and might be a little bit more optimistic, but he's only got like 15 steal speed and like 10 to 15 homer power. So, even in best case scenario, I don't know, like what's he going to do? This is best case 17. Like, okay. I mean, it's not bad. It wouldn't be bad. Don't get me wrong, but I don't even see that happening, to be honest. So yeah, I'm pretty like whatever on Tofar. I mean, if he's there in a very deep league, if he's there for like a utility spot, or like if I wanted to grab him, as like an upside flyer on my bench or something, like in a draft Champions League, then sure. But we're already done with like 12-team mixed leagues at this point when you're drafting Tofar, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, if we're just looking at ADP, the guys going around him, and I mean, it'll kind of give you an idea of what you're looking at in regards to like potential return. Like Will Myers is in this area. I like Will Myers for a bounce back, but like that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a complete bounce back. Anthony Rendon, is he going to stay healthy for like 20 games and give you any value? Justin Turner, Chris Morel's down here. Like these are the types of Jorge Mateo, we'll get to in a second. Like you're looking for a little bit of upside, maybe some playing time, and like you're hoping for the best out of this guys and this area. I will say, you kind of mentioned the upside. Like Tovar keeps outperforming what he's supposed to do. So I don't want to put anything on him. He's only going to be 21. Like I don't want to cap his limit and say he's only like a 15, 20 guy. The power's never really been a big tool of his, but it seems like it's growing. The speed, I think, is maybe even underrated by prospect ranks, considering the amount that he's been stealing. But I mean, I think there's still some room for growth if he gets the playing time. But yes, it's Bud Black, it's Colorado, so we'll see him in like mid-July, and they'll bury him on the depth chart even then. So like, it's like, are you really going to wait for it on your roster? Probably not.
No.
All right. Moving on, 32 through 38, we've already covered them in any number of podcasts. That is Luis Urias, Rodolfo Castro, Luis Garcia, Gavin Lux, Luis Rengifo, Nick Gordon, and Enrique Hernandez. That puts us into the 39 through 46 tier grid here. We're already over an hour, so let's just pick a couple out from this tier and maybe the next. And then, like, I think the next tier is really the one, maybe if we want to dig in anymore, we really should talk about, because that's really the prospects. That's where, if people are going to take some gambles late, maybe it comes from those groups.
Yeah, I honestly like a Bryce Terang on the Brewers. Like he looks like the guy who it looks like he's gonna be the starter for the Brewers. So if he is, the guy, which it looks like he is, I don't see why he wouldn't be at this point. I mean, he is a lefty, so he's going to get benched versus lefties, but that's fine. I mean, like I've said in the past, benching a lefty versus a lefty is not a bad thing necessarily. And he has he's hit 13 homers, stole 34 bags, and hit 286 in AAA last year as a 22-year-old. And he's going to have a starting job. I'm honestly a little surprised that more hasn't been made of him, like in drafts. Like he's going crazy late. Like I think, let me see, Turan is right now going at 477 overall. So that is like basically free. Like you can draft him whenever. Like he's totally like, it's up to you. Like if you're taking a guy at 300 overall or 500 overall, it's basically the same thing. It doesn't matter at that point. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that like he's not even going like I would think like if you looked at Terang's numbers of 13 homers, 34 steals, 286 in AAA last year, if you were to look at just those numbers, usually that would equate to like a top 200 overall pick. But he's going, like I said, he's going way after that. So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Like I'm not a prospect guy. I just I look at the numbers and like whatchamacallit, like Itch likes him. Prospect people like him a lot. They think he's got a really good, solid hit tool, and he's got good power. And like I said, he's got great speed. So, I mean, if you're looking at a guy late, like he's basically free in all drafts. So I would I would look at him, and then the other guy who is also basically free is Peraza, Oswald Peraza. So I am in the camp that I don't think the Yankees are going to go into the season with Peraza as a starter. I totally feel like, just because of the track record for like in past years, like the Yankees never go to the rookie. Like they're going to play like Falafel over Peraza, probably. Like that's just my gut feeling. I don't know if it's going to be what it is. Who knows? But Peraza, for a super late pick last year in AAA, he hit 19 homers, stole 33 bags, and hit 259 with only a 23% strikeout rate. Came up to the majors and hit pretty well. Hit 306 in only 18 games. Again, like I don't know if Peraza is going to be the starter. Unlike Terang, who I think is going to start, Peraza may be like a utility guy / he may get sent to the minors. I don't know. Who knows with the Yankees? He should start over Falafel, but I don't know if he will. But he's again a late flyer. You can do worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I like both those calls on Peraza and on Terang. I guess just for the people listening, we did kind of skip it here that we skipped over. 39 was Isaiah Connor Falefa. 20 was Jorge Mateo, who I actually wouldn't mind if he had a starting job. I just don't know if he's getting a full-time starting job. Elvis Andrews, who's currently unsigned. I'm surprised, again, the Rockies didn't give him a 5-year deal. Ramon Urias at 42, Hassan Kim at 43, John Birdie 44, Vidal Brujan at 45, and Aledmus Diaz at 46. I will say in this group, other than Peraza and Terang, I also like Elly De La Cruz if he can manage to get the playing time for Cincinnati. He's got super loud tools. He's kind of in the mold of O'Neill Cruz. They're just copying over last names there, but like they're both very loud tools. They swing and miss a lot. He only got the Double-A last year, but the Reds also don't really need to have a reason to keep him there. So if he gets a call, or if it sounds like he's getting playing time, I also like Elly De La Cruz in this area as well, Greg.
Yeah. I honestly, I like him a lot. I feel like he's going to be a September call-up. I don't see De La Cruz coming up to really be a factor this year. But yeah, I mean, where he's going in drafts, it's not a terrible flyer. I would probably go Terang or Peraza before him, but yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, when the Reds trade away half their starting lineup in August or in July, then maybe he gets his time up. But you're right. There's probably not a whole lot of chance he breaks camp with them, but just a name to watch if you're waiting and just like you can take the shot on the guy and see if he makes camp, or if news comes out he might. Then I think that's a name that you can potentially watch out for. I'm completely with you on Peraza, though. Like Peraza and Terang both feel like they should be going a lot earlier, considering that they're both, a hop, skip, and a jump from full playing time, potentially, and both have some pretty decent upside. So that is our shortstops, Gray. I mean, again, it was actually fun to talk about all the way into the 50s, Gray. The 50s. And we got to like 5 in second base. It's like, do we have to continue? Can we stop?
Second base, it was like, okay, number 1, Marcus Semien. Oh, forget it. Let's
move on.
Let's call it off.
All right, so we have finished shortstops. If you're listening, thanks for listening. We'll get to third base next week. As always, follow us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is the @RazBall account. You can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/razzballfantasy. Somebody asked me on Twitter if I'm going to be publishing my rankings since I come on here and just give Gray shit about his all the time. I will. I'll put together my rankings and we will get those published so that at least as you're listening to the pod, you can at least see where I differ and can call me out for being crazy as well, because I'm sure there will be some of that. Gray, until next week, it was fun talking shortstops.
All right, Lates.
All right, see you.